Jael went to rendezvous with Sisera and said to him, turn aside to me. And like an angel, she says to him, be not afraid. In this way, a man who is not a relative enters a woman's tent like the act of a conjugating husband. But it is he who lies down to receive, and she who covers him with a blanket. He begs her for just a sip of water, and in response, she breaks the seal on a new skin of milk, gives him a drink, tucks him in. And then, second-wave feminists and the Freudianism they pretend to despise have a field day. Every double entendre I make with this text works largely the same in the Hebrew as in the English. Jael, the woman of Haver, takes the phallic tent peg in one hand and the hammer of laborers, the hammer perhaps of women's labor, in her right hand. And 2 weeks ago, the spies came into Rahab, but today Jael in secrecy comes into Sisera and thrusts the tent peg into his what? The anatomical word here is uncertain and appears only one other time, in Song of Songs, where it is used of a female lover. It is compared to the cleft or open side of a pomegranate. The temple is traditional, but the temple is not much like a pomegranate, and the speaker of the Song of Songs in both uses of the word is moving down from the hair to the eyes, to the teeth, to the lips, to the front of the mouth, to the... So I want to say the back of the mouth, something about the shape and color of a pomegranate leads me to it. So let's just go with Jael, the woman of Hever, takes a tent peg and a hammer and comes to him in secrecy and thrusts the peg into his mouth. And the Hebrew gets all weird in the ordering here. First, peg in mouth. Second, the peg descends into the soil. Third, Sisera is asleep, and he was exhausted, and he died. Perhaps it's a textual thing that I'm not smart enough to work out, but why is Sisera described as exhausted after the peg and not before? Exhausted, drained, overexerted perhaps, like a soldier all day at battle, like something of himself is emptied in the act. The story is so significant they include the song about it sung afterwards in the next chapter, and it goes like this. Blessed of women is Jael, wife of Hever the Kenite, the woman of the tents, she is blessed. Water he asked, milk she gave. In a bowl fit for a king she presented cream. Her hand to the peg she stretched it out, her right hand to the laborer's hammer, and she smited Sisera. She destroyed his head, shattering and passing through his mouth. Between her legs he kneeled, he fell, he lay. Between her legs he kneeled, he fell. And where he kneeled, there he fell, despoiled. So when I said that the violence of the scene is sexually charged, welcome back to Sunday School Stories for Grown-Ups. When I was in Sunday school, my two top baby names were Rahab and Jael, if that says anything about who I was as a person. Jael scratches my brain. In the middle of a book of unhinged violence against women, this is in the middle of a larger collection of unhinged violence against women. Jael is cathartic. At last, it is the woman who takes into her hand the instrument of violence and the man who is the victim. It's like my favorite genre of show growing up, feminist revenge narratives, Promising Young Woman, Girl on the Train, Anything Touched by Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale. I'm obsessed with the kill your abuser trope, with violence against men in power. Or at least I was, definitely. Imagine it's 2017 and you're a young woman and rage characterizes your every trip to church. You're barely keeping composure during a sermon where the pastor reveals that actually, Esther probably slept her way to the top. Afterwards, the minister comes up to you and says, he's been noticing that you seem kind of quite angry when you come to church recently. Is everything okay? Would you like a referral perhaps to the Presbyterian counseling agency they keep on retainer for women because they need to do that apparently? You email the counseling agency and you say, hey, listen, so I'm I need a feminist counselor because that's what a lot of my stuff's going to be about. And 2 weeks later they email back, hi, dead name. All of the counselors that we have are experienced in dealing with a wide variety of issues. But you might also like to try this facility and send you a link to a secular counseling agency down the road. My minister then made it a habit to come up to me every few weeks and ask me how I was going with my anger. Great! I am going great with my anger, thank you. Around that same time, I drew this picture. So is it any wonder that the story of Jael sang to me? You can put it away. There's something that I talk about that happens in my life that I think happens in all our lives probably, but for me, it's most easy to articulate when I talk about being trans. One specific part about being trans in the world, just for me, is I say that I have a violence. You could call it an anger or you could call it a wound, and I can put the violence in two places. I can put it inside of me or I can put it outside of me. If I'm in a room full of people enjoying the cis status quo, the room is at peace, but I have a violence inside of me. Once I come out, once I awkwardly be the first person to share my pronouns, or God forbid, correct someone on my pronouns after I've already shared them, relationships that were smooth sailing have this new pain punctuated into them. I move the violence from the inside to the outside, and suddenly the mood in the room is awkward. From their perspective, I have created a violence where there was once peace. For the people on the outside, it looks like I just created a wound for no reason. But the violence, the wound, it was already there inside of me, and I did not make the violence, I just moved it. When I became the agitator for women's rights at an old church, I looked like the problem, but in reality, I was just the one who moved the wound, moved the violence from the inside to the outside. When I wrote an essay to my elders entitled, "Do I Need a Penis to Preach?" I made them uncomfortable with the title, but it wasn't a new discomfort. I had simply moved the discomfort to a place where they could see it. And despite the fact that moving the wound, moving the violence makes it louder, you have to move it outside before you can begin to heal it. When I first signed up for this sermon, I thought my point was going to go like this. When I see violence against women in the Bible, I am quick to critique it. I know that God is on the side of the poor, that violence against women and foreigners is not an appropriate plot device, that, genocide is bad. But it has taken a lot longer for me to realize that perhaps I need to be able to critique the violence in this story too, to condemn the murder of even those in power. Much to my distress, my religion teaches me that Sisera is the beloved of God. Why is that so hard for me to say? I recently wrote a reflection for Professor Sathi Clark, who preached in the evening service a few weeks ago, and he accurately read me for looking for religious reasons for upholding my political beliefs. Appropriately convicted, I started looking for the ways in which my religion calls me one step further than my politics can, as if I didn't already know. So, this is my homework. God loves kings. Cops are created in God's divine image. God delights in men in their wonderfully created little human bodies. And God eats dinner with anti-vaxxers and white people. The Spirit of God intercedes for my ex. For the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people, first to the victim and also to the perpetrator. Which is good because I've been both. So I spent a little time trying to kind of let the gospel transcend power dynamics in my head, feeling a bit like a moderate centrist sellout. And it's right. But I actually think God saved me from having to sit in that space too longer, because I think that picture is also a little flawed. I don't think the gospel transcends power dynamics. I think the gospel is meant to transform power dynamics. I actually think my instincts are right to feel that the violence of Jael is different to the violence in the rest of Judges. Because speaking from a narrative standpoint, I don't think Jael is the perpetrator of violence so much as the violence mover. In the middle of Judges, a book whose climax involves the dismembering of a woman to turn her body into political postcards in the mailboxes of local representatives, that really happens. Here in Jael, there is this one great outburst of reversal. Jael moves the violence against women's bodies from the inside to the outside. At last, it is someone else's body who gets violated, someone else who thinks they are safe when they are not, someone else who dies for political ends. And in doing so, Jael says, "This is what you have been doing to us." I want to call this movement of the violence from the inside to the outside a catharsis. Jael is a catharsis of the gendered violence of Judges around her, and you have to move the wound outside of you before you can begin to heal it. And catharsis is the movement, the opening of the wound. I think Jael shows the violence against women in Judges more masterfully and obviously than any Judge's actual violence against women. But while Jael reveals the problem of violence against women, she does not solve it. Because catharsis is the opening of the wound, but it is not the healing. My feminist revenge movies are cathartic. They help me feel the emotions of living under patriarchy. They reveal the wound, but they do not heal it. My "Do I Need a Penis to Preach" essay was cathartic. It helped reveal the wound that men had brought against women in that church. But that was only the opportunity to begin healing, not healing itself. And every time I correct someone in the way they gender me, I reveal the wound. But it is not in my power alone to heal it. It is an invitation to begin the healing. And very recently, I moved another wound from the inside to the outside of me, in a very literal sense. And now that the wound is on the outside of me, the healing can begin. I wonder if we can think of Christ crucified as the movement of a wound from the inside to the outside. A wound moved from the inside to the outside of humanity. At first glance, it looks like God dying is the problem. Why did you have to go and make a death like that? But maybe the wound was already there and God just moved it. Moved it in a way that means we can see it, and also moved it in a way that means we can begin to heal. God is using God's death to say, "This is what you have been doing to each other." The problem is not that we've been killing God, the problem is that we've been killing each other. The problem is not that God died, the problem is that we did. Maybe God took something outside of humanity so that the inside of humanity can begin to heal. Maybe the cross is a catharsis, the opening of the wound, standing as an invitation to begin the healing. And that's what Jael and Christ crucified have in common.